welcome to our webinar series. So we've had a webinar series for the last little bit. This is the 4th session. We have one more session next month, and believe it or not, we are extending it. We're having a conference. We're planning on aiming to have it in September. We did move it till January. I'll share that information too in the chat box, but it is a data sovereignty conference. So it is open nationally, so anyone's welcome to join. It will be here in Treaty 1 territory, Winnipeg, Manitoba, at the RBC Convention Center, the 3rd week of January 2025. So we welcome you to register once the registration is available, and we will be doing a call for stories and knowledge. And I'll share that. It is on our social media pages for First Nations Health and Social Secretariat in Manitoba. But with this webinar, and we'll extend the webinar series, so we'll have a couple more, and I'll share that in the chat box here as well near the end. If you do have any questions and questions, please put them in the chat box, and I'll ask them to Vanessa while we're going through, and we'll get started. So we'd like to welcome Vanessa Tait from the First Nations Health and Social Secretariat of Manitoba. And the webinar is how to set up your own research information governance committee for your community or your organization. So I'll let Vanessa introduce herself.
Thank you, Carla. Danse, my name is Vanessa Tait. Any voice that Megana. I'm originally from Opi-Punabir Cree Nation, Northern Community, also known as South Indian Lake. I'm just wanted to give a little bit of a background around, just introduce myself. I do have my master's in development practice degree with focus on Indigenous development. Also have my Bachelor of Commerce degree. A little background about, how I came to be and kind of locating myself in how I've landed into this path around, again, research governance, but also, data sovereignty, self-determination. I was a past Health Information Research Governance Committee academic member. I also was the research ethics in the past research ethics coordinator. But initially, how I came to be into looking at First Nations research and storytelling was, I got into university and really realized that, our stories were being told by others. I was learning about who I was through, again, research, but that story was not a lot of the truth of who we are. And really, that's kind of how I came to be involved in this path. And again, I love to talk about research and data. So I'm very honored to be here today to just give you a little insight. Again, this is, not, the ultimate, this is not, but it's an opportunity to give you some tools and some resources to have that conversation around how to develop a research governance committee for your community organization. Yeah, so thank you, Carla. Did you want me to share the screen now?
Yeah, if you want to start sharing the screen. So I know research, when we do research, it's very important to set up to have safety in place, or to have a structure in place. So do you want to just share a bit about that and some of the questions that we should be taking into consideration when it comes to that?
Sorry, Carla, can you repeat the question? I was just sharing, so I kind of...
Oh yeah, no, I was just talking about the research, how it's important to have safety guards in place, and so for the community and organization, why is that relationship important, but at the same time, just some of the questions for us to think about when it comes to this area.
Okay, so again, when it comes to research and research coming into communities, but also you as an individual in sharing your story and your insight is, it's important to basically have like that safeguard or that gatekeeper. We utilize the word gatekeeper, but what it is to ensure we're protecting our culture, our way of life, and how we tell our stories from those that might tell, again, a story, like let's say institutions, researchers, consultants. So it's really important to have that in place, because A lot of our First Nations communities across, Turtle Island do have different ways of being. So just really looking at ensuring that, those practices and those cultural ways are being honored, and your story is again coming from that perspective of your community, because each community is different. We do know, we do have different governance structures, we do have different culture, again, even within Manitoba there is 5 language groups or cultural groups. Again, I come from the Rocky Cree, so definitely we do have, so it's important to have those safeguards to ensure that that story that's being told about your community, or that story that's out there, comes from community and comes from the individuals within the community. And also to one of the things that I always state is that ensuring that you have ownership of that story, because unfortunately we do have some areas where when you do tell your story, or when it's in a book, sometimes again it's out there, and making sure that it belongs to ultimately the community and yourself. Okay. Can't hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Did you hear my introduction?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yes.
The chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just gonna get started. So basically, we've had a number of research conferences and different areas where we've spoken to knowledge keepers, but also our community members. So one of the elders said, research is a relationship based on respect, and it takes time to build trust. I know definitely, in going in community and just sitting with community, sometimes, it takes some time to, for me, when I go into community, I sit with community and I have, a cup of tea, I speak with the elders, and definitely starting to build that relationship with community is important. And that comes out of respect. Sometimes, you might have an agenda going into community, you might have these things that you need to, engage with or obtain information from, but for the most part, some building that relationship is utmost important, and that will build a foundation for any research project or anything that you're going to sit with community with. So definitely, it does take some time. I know looking at it from a research ethics board, institutional, there's some times where, again, it states that, you can't do research with community unless, you have a ethics approval. For the most part, for what I believe is that, you need to build that relationship with those that you're going to be engaging with, because they are going to direct the research and path. Sorry, I'm trying to change the slide. So just kind of, a few questions to consider as I'm presenting today. Has there been any research, studies, or other activities involving extracting of information, data, or stories in your community or organization done by an outside entity, organization, or researcher? Who guided and directed that process? Did the research benefit your community or organization? Did the research verify the findings with your community or organization? Was a final report paper provided to your community organization, and was it what you expected? So just like looking and then just really like thinking about those questions in regards to research coming into community, or consultants, or different industry coming into community, is really considering has it'd been guided by community. So just kind of thinking about those questions as I'm going through the slides. Again, as Carla stated, you can ask questions. It's kind of more of a conversational type of, again, webinar, and she will ask me the questions as needed. So the importance of research information governance committees is too often researchers and consultants, governments, industry, and other groups have extracted our stories, data, information from our communities without first establishing respectful relationships, proper consent, and direction from a community organization. So a research governance committee can ensure that a proper process and protocol are established by and for your community and organization on what research will benefit the community organization and how it should be conducted, who is involved, and if your community organization should enter into these research relationships. So it gives that opportunity to really look at, again, the research governance is, oftentimes, researchers do come, we do have, again, different employees in our organization, but it's really ensuring that, when research does come, that there's, a proper protocol or process in place, ensure, because there is a lot of research that's out there. So just making sure that, that those respectful relationships are developed beforehand. So, this is an example again of an ideal relationship. Definitely, communities, organizations do things differently based on their culture, their way of doing things when it comes to relationships. So at the beginning of the idea, whether it be a research idea, whether it be, again, a project that wants to come into the community, just different things, including the community organization in the planning. So identifying consent process and identified from the community organization and the researcher and for individuals involved. Identifying those ethical principles and also ownership, control, access, and possession, how the First Nations knowledge is included and how communication will be done. So just definitely really starting off that respectful relationships and walking hand in hand with the First Nations organization or community that you're working with to ensure, that research is ideal for the community. Once idea is developed, I need to go through a research ethics process. So this is where, again, the research governance committee could play a role is with that process. If a research is regionally based, again, currently right now, we do have the Health Information Research Governance Committee for First Nations in Manitoba. So again, if a research project is regionally based, for example, if they say, First Nations in Manitoba, experience, higher rates of diabetes or just any area in regards to First Nations collectively in Manitoba, the Health Information Research Governance Committee does have a process, which I'll go through a little bit of just as an example of how to develop a research governance committee. So if you have one established, again, ensuring that you go through the process. If you do not have one established, what kind of items need to be identified to make sure that the research is done in a good way and safe and is ethical. So research ethics boards. So what are research ethics boards? Are committees made up of individuals that review research to make sure that it is done ethically. The rights of research participants are protected. I'll give you a few examples here within Manitoba of some research ethics boards. So all institutions that conduct research involving humans by the Canadian government regulation must have a research ethics board that reviews and approves research. This includes feasibility, relevance, validity, participant recruitment, free prior informed consent, risk and benefit, confidentiality, and data sharing. Again, so the process that it would happen was that there will be an initial review of research ethics protocols and project methodology and methods. Again, feedback and guidance will be provided by the Research Ethics Board within the research project. So again, for example, with the Health Information Research Governance Committee, there is an internal review that happens, and then it goes to, I'll use HIRC, which is an acronym from Health Information Research Governance Committee. And then from that internal review, they do have, you know, a review with the committee with research within Manitoba for in regards to First Nations. And either you'll be getting approval or again, a conditional approval. Sometimes when a conditional approval is provided, there is some steps that a researcher would need to take, or, you know, some questions in regards to a research project. Ongoing review of approval projects to ensure compliance and approved protocols and methods. So there's again, I'll explain it in another slide, but again, the 4 criteria for Health Information Research Governance Committee and what we go through in regards to reviewing a research application. So examples of research ethics bodies in Manitoba. So again, the Tri-Council Statement, which is again a ethical conduct for research involving humans, is a joint policy of Canada's 3 federal research agencies, which is the Canadian Institute of Health Research, and as well as the Natural Science and Engineering Research, and the Social Science of Humanities Research. So researchers do again apply for funding in regards to these 3 tri-councils, and there is a training you take for core, so ensuring that, you know, again, the tri-council certificate is obtained, and then also Research Manitoba Rhythm, which is a newer thing and so in 2022 Research Manitoba launched research improvements through harmonization in Manitoba, so Rhythm. So again, within this process as well, too, the Health Information Research Governance Committee does have an area within this if there is research with First Nations in Manitoba. Some of the research ethics boards are University of Manitoba Research Ethics and Compliance Office, University of Winnipeg, Red River as well has one, Brandon University. So most academic institutions do have a research ethics body. Sometimes within some academic institutions, such as the University of Manitoba, there is also departments that have their own research ethics bodies within there. So I just wanted to give you, again, a little bit of an explanation on some of the research ethics bodies that are out there in regards to research in Manitoba. So in explaining the Tri-Council, so research guidelines pertaining to Indigenous people. So again, there's Chapter 9, research involving First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people of Canada. So the Tri-Council policy statement outlines these research protocols. So in going through it, you know, again, I'm sure those researchers that are online have, you know, gone through Chapter 9. So again, I really want to again, get your attention towards the preamble. So the chapter is designed to serve as a framework for the ethical conduct of research involving Aboriginal people. It is offered in a spirit of respect. It is not intended to override or replace ethical guidelines offered by Aboriginal people themselves or Indigenous people. So again, with this preamble, it's within the Health Information Research Governance Committee. We do have our own, again, research guidelines and, you know, again, criteria. So if your organization or, again, a First Nations community develop your own research ethics, research governance committee, then, you know, again, researchers would need to abide by what you have established and what you have put in place. So it's really important to definitely put those research governance committees into play, because again, it offers that ability for your community to have a lot of ownership, control, and just ways of, again, developing that relationship with the researchers. And it's important for the researchers to really sit with community in regards to that. So so where to begin? So again, does my community organization have a research governance process? Again, some organizations and communities do have informal processes for sure. When again, let's say for instance, health research comes into a community, there is a process, you know, that might be in place. It doesn't necessarily state that, you know, there is a research governance committee, but there might be a process. So instead of again, I said reinventing the wheel, you might already have a process in place So would my community organization benefit from a research governance committee? Again, I personally think, a lot of each community should have a research governance committee in some capacity. So who is the governing body in your community organization? So again, when we're thinking about research governance committee, like for instance, for a First Nation community, chief and council might mandate certain, committees or certain spaces. Also for an organization, you might have your board of directors, and again, also too, there might be a health committee. So where would the mandate or support to start a research governance committee come from? And why I'm stating these questions is like, that's kind of how the Health Information Research Governance Committee started. So I'm just going to go through like a little bit of a journey of where the Manitoba First Nations Governance Committee that we do have, HERC, it was established. So in 1996, HERC was established. So there was a regional health survey that came out at that time. And because it was a regionally focused project, trying to get, again, somebody to oversee it. So that's kind of, how the seed was planted for HERC, was through the research health, regional health survey, which was in 1996. And then in 1998, HERC was mandated through the Chiefs in Assembly, where they were, again, a resolution was established in 1998. So again, for First Nations governance, again, having a resolution in Chiefs in Assembly be provided to the floor, and for the Chiefs in Assembly to again approve it. So definitely, so HERC was mandated through the Chiefs in Assembly. And again, in 2007 and 2019, there was a revised mandate. So anytime, again, your research governance committee, there might be changes, there might be things added, definitely bringing it back to the floor. So we did bring it back to the Chiefs in Assembly, and again in 2019, we brought it back again to our membership for FNHSSM. So definitely that's kind of a journey of how HERC came into play, and it will continue. The journey will continue. Like if there is a revised mandate, come 2024, whatever what might change within the research governance, then definitely you would bring it back to where who had mandated you. So I know in a previous webinar, this was already discussed around the resolutions supporting support from leadership. So these are definitely, the title of the resolutions and how HERC was established. So I'm not going to go into great detail. Again, the previous person that did the webinar, I did explain this a little bit. If you have any questions, for sure, again, reach out to us. So some of the examples of requests that HERC does get, research application that identifies the Manitoba First Nations at a regional level, as explained earlier. Research applications that seek to access the regional health survey data at a regional level. So definitely the regional health survey is, First Nations data research. So in order to access that data, whether it be a researcher, there is a process, and HERC has to provide that approval during one of their meetings. So requests for access to the Indian Status Registry data linkage file to those held at the Manitoba Center for Health Policy. So definitely, again, there is the Indian Status Registry that's there. HERC does provide oversight for that. So there's a process that, again, and getting approval to that Indian Status Registry to link with other databases that are within the Manitoba Center for Health Policy. It'll come through HERC. So those are just a few examples of it. So I'm just going to get started in a little bit of, sorry, I'm just...
Vanessa, I do have a quick question.
Okay.
So, I'm backwards here. Hold on one second. Okay. So the question that I have is there consequences for violating the ethical conduct in research? For instance, doing research without a community knowing about it?
So, so I'll just give a brief example of, based on the question. So again, let's say again, somebody published an article without consent of a community, just really providing a commentary to, again, currently right now, there is no established like legislation. So it's just kind of really, if, for instance, if we do see First Nations in Manitoba, like research out there, and they haven't come through her, we would contact that researcher and basically say we do have, we would have that opportunity to speak with them and say that, we do have a process within Manitoba. And I know that has been done before. So again, HERC has identified, some research that's out there that, may not have come through our research, regional research ethics board. Again, I strongly recommend that, each community have their own research so that they have a process in place. So within your terms of reference or within different protocol that you might have, that if somebody breaches or, provides that insight of our community without us knowing, what are we going to do? So that's kind of would come with, your research governance committee on the process of how to do that and how you go about any type of breach or violation without community knowing that you're doing research on them or for them. So definitely each governance committee would put that that process in place. I know that's not really a direct answer, or it's just basically I can't really speak on behalf of all research governance committees, but again with HERC, I know that the process is like we've had to pull in researchers to say, hey, we have a process in place, and then just kind of mediating it and ensuring that proper stuff is done. Also too, I know within the institution they do have their research ethics board and they get approval through that process as well too. So is there again a way to ensure that these researchers are properly doing and conducting research, especially for First Nations in Manitoba. So each research ethics research governance committee will have their own process, and how do we go about it? And those processes are important. Those, again, ensuring that those relationships, those respectful relationships are conducted with those you're doing research with. And I know, again, with each research ethics board, they do have a process in place as well too. But I always fundamentally say that the research governance committee you establish, and what you establish it being, if there is a breach or if there is a violation of anything in regards to the community you're working with or the organization you're working with, that those protocols will be abided by, because that's good research, that's respectful research with those you're doing research with. So definitely that's my long-winded answer, but again, for me it would be established through your governance committee process that you would do establish and put in place. Okay, so again, with everything, a lot of times there's a vision and a mission. I'm not saying that, again, you have to have a vision and a mission in place. Again, some research governance committees do have mandates, or, they may have like a purpose. So with the vision, you could, again, sit with, your governance committee, sit with your community. I'm going to kind of use more of, for this, I always try and use like an example. And it's a generic example. It's not an example of an actual community. But again, for instance, if a First Nation were to develop a research governance committee, you would sit with your community, whether it be your elders, whether it be your youth, whether it be, again, your leadership, your chief and council, and then just really having an engagement of like, how has research, because again, for our community members, we know, we always hear that statement, we've been researched to death. And the reason also too is because sometimes research that has been done on or by for our communities has not really benefited us, and sometimes we don't see the report. So in establishing a research governance committee, it really provide that insight, ensuring that either you have a research agreement, but again, for the research governance committee, just really, again, providing that vision and mission, like why would we have a research governance in our community? Has research like been harmful to our community in the past. And we do know that there is, you know, extensive, you know, things that have happened to us in regards to research. So trying to really think about and talk with your community members around, again, what is our goals and our plans? Like, why do we want a research governance committee? Where are we going with the research governance committee? Again, also to the mission is, why does the research governance committee exist? The purpose, core values, and the foundation. So, you know, for instance, for like a simple thing is like basically a research governance committee exists within my First Nation community. Again, this is a generic example, but really saying that, you know, to ensure that that researcher that does come in our community is respecting our protocols. Let's say, you know, you start things off all the time with the feast. So that researcher honoring that that's how your community is going about things, and that's your protocol that you put into place within your research governance committee structure. Or, you know, again, in order to come into the community, you know, within any type of project, you know, the process that you have in place is that, you know, you go through a chief and council process. But again, if, you know, you have a research governance committee, that any researcher will go through that process. So there's different things that are in place. So what is the vision and your mission behind having that research governance committee? And it could be basic as like, you know, to protect our stories, to protect our data, to ensure that our stories, our information are going to benefit our community. So it just basically, you know, again, a guiding of having that vision and that mission in place for your community. So the Health Information Research Governance Committee did do, again, a strategic plan process. And currently right now we're looking at updating some of our information as well too. So this was a vision statement. So breathing life into the cultural teachings of our original people of Turtle Island to be who we are and who our ancestors prayed for. The mission statement is committed to research that supports the well-being of our nation as led and directed by original people of Turtle Island, needs, priorities, and requirements. So definitely, again, you can see that's just an example of a vision and mission statement. So again, the purpose of your research governance committee. So questions to ask. So what is the purpose? What type of research is being looked at? So for instance, let's say, you know, again, there is a researcher that comes in your community who wants to look at type 2 diabetes and the effects on specifically your First Nation community. Ensuring that, you know, again, if there's researchers that are coming into your community, that there is that type of process, whether it be health related research. There's also, you know, again, social determinants of health related research. There's environmental research. There's different research that's coming into communities and different as well, maybe feasibility studies. So really looking at, you know, what is the purpose of our research governance committee? Why do we want to implement it? Why do we want to put it in place? And is the purpose to ensure that, you know, you have that process with those respectful relationships that are put in place.
Vanessa, I do have a quick question.
Okay.
And it was regarding just the previous slide. Can we see some samples that other communities have used, if permission given to share?
Okay, so which slide was it? Sorry.
Two back. It was just when you were talking.
Oh, examples of requests?
Yeah.
Okay. So examples of requests for research applications or access to the regional health survey, or again, so I can give you an example of the Indian status registry file. And it's just off the top of my head. But for the ones that we have seen come through the Health Information Research Governance Committee. So let's say, you know, the samples of vision statements, mission statements, and research protocols. I did give you an example of the Health Information Research Governance Committee vision mission. I will give some with the research protocols would be our 4 criteria. So I'll give examples of that. Other communities that have done, actually, you know, again, this is planting a seed so that we can get some research governance committees out there in our First Nations communities, ensuring that, you know, I haven't seen any First Nation community-based ones thus far, but definitely I can give you an example of our HERC and what we have in place. So again, the purpose of HERC, so the Health Information Research Governance Committee is an Assembly of Chiefs mandated committee tasked with gatekeeping the Manitoba First Nation research file held at the Manitoba Centre for Health Policy and acting as the Regional First Nations Research Ethics Board. Again, ensuring that, those applications that do come in, when I say gatekeeper, it's not to say that we're the ones who direct what is in there. We basically want to ensure that the First Nations are benefiting from the research. So again, definitely your purpose will be different, whether it be your organization. Let's say, you have a health center and, you have a health committee and they've mandated a research, governance committee for, that health center. And then you have researchers coming in to look at, maybe specifically that community, and Chief and Council has said, okay, we have a research governance committee in regards to health. You might go through that process of is this research going to benefit our community? Is this something that will help in regards to whether it be the health and well-being of the community? Do we want to, like, again, there's so many different aspects of it, but definitely that would be, again, the purpose of your research governance committee within that aspect. So some of the guiding principles. So a question to ask is, what are the values that we will be included that surround this work? So this is examples of, again, some of the guiding principles that we have within the research department. So respectful relationship and connection. So again, we honor our role in ensuring that respectful relationships are renewed and developed while creating a safe space to always do our work in a respectful way. Some other guiding principles could be honoring the sovereignty of our nation, spiritual foundation, healing, ethics and integrity, trust and commitment, ethics and integrity, protect and support, and oversight and leadership. So those are just examples of some guiding principles. Definitely you can put statements within your guiding principles and what that looks like. And just it would be based on, again, that engagement with your community or your organization, or, again, how your research governance committee is established. The guiding principles are just really just to, again, provide that spirit and intent of why, that's in place. I kind of, explained a little bit about mandate, where, again, where you're supported, or the reason why you came to be, or your community might definitely how you've been mandated, kind of like how HERC was mandated through the Chiefs and Assembly. Also establishing that terms of reference. So basically the terms of reference could basically look at like the composition. So for example, you might have, you want an elder in there, a youth, someone from leadership, someone from the health department, the education department. So that's like basically that would be the composition of your research governance committee. Again, for an organization, it might be, the directors of the different departments, but definitely would be based on the importance of, again, what research is coming into your community. So I can't necessarily like have, this is how it's going to be. It would be based on like what that looks like for, and then also terms, like, do people sit on there for 2-3 years? So basically kind of looking at that terms of reference. Selection process, is there a call out for participants? Do you, again, choose who's going to come in? So how is that established for that selection process for your research governance committee? Quorum, again, this looks like, if we were to look at a research application, ensuring that, the majority of the research governance committee is there to ensure that, a proper decision is made. So what would be your quorum? Would it be, 100% of the research governance committee needs to be there in order to look at a research application, or look at, those that are coming into the community? Frequency of meetings, you might meet 4 times a year. HERC does meet 6 times a year. So just basically putting it out there that, because sometimes, researchers will look at a research governance committee and say, okay, I would like to do research with this community or this organization. When will you be meeting? So that they can have time to put together some of their stuff as well too. And then research applications, like what does that look like? You could develop your own. I will provide an example today on like the research application when it comes to HERC. So where the committee fits within the organization and how it connects to community. For the most part, again, like again, if within First Nation communities, if you do have a research governance committee, is there a way that you have to communicate some of that back to community? So there's just different ways of looking at it. Relationship to other entities. So need to define the relationship. How does that look when it comes to institutions? Do you have, again, because you'll start noticing, like again with HERC, we do have like a relationship, or again an understanding with the University of Manitoba. Sometimes again, there's in the past we've gone to present on the way we look at things, the way we do things with their research ethics boards. They know that HERC is in place. Again, with Manitoba Center for Health Policy, with just those relationships, you'll start to build with different, whether it be researchers or institutions, or as well as different consultants or entities. The roles and responsibilities of your research governance committee, again, will be defined by your mandate, but also by either your organization or the community or community you're establishing it for. So what are those roles and responsibilities? When does the research governance committee need to step in regards to research or in regards to different things? Another example that might not be research institutional related, like, so if a, industry wants to come into the community to do engagement sessions, for instance, there might be also a process in place there that you need, that this is, again, how does that engagement process happen? What is your protocol in your community? The research governance committee might have that established, that, if you want to meet with the community members, like this is basically kind of, we start off with a feast, just different things like that. So it's definitely going to be geared by community and by the organization you're establishing it for. This is kind of, again, the structure of our members in HERC. So we do have First Nation Tribal Council health directors. We also have First Nations advisors, environment and or social economics. So in regards to that, we have First Nation directors, like health director, education or economic development. So, and we both have North and South. We try and, have a mix of North and South representation. First Nation academic advisor, as stated earlier when I was doing my bio, I was the academic advisor within HERC. We also have a First Nations youth and First Nations elder. So definitely you can see kind of, and this would be, your composition might be a bit different within your research governance committee. A lot of time, okay, so when you do have membership orientation package, this is again, how will this look and what needs to be covered. So if a term expires within HERC, again, there's another call out that happens to ensure that, our HERC committee has all its members. But the orientation package can include, again, the history of, HERC, how it came to be, what is our criteria, what is our, terms of reference, how, again, the resolution was established, some of the changes within the resolution, some of the applications, our application process. So we kind of just got, go through that orientation package with each member that's coming through to ensure that they understand, and then, sometimes we'll go through a process of like, what are some of the applications that have come through. Again, with a lot of the applications that do come through, it just really knowing that, you know, again, we also get them to sign a confidentiality form, because there's a lot of different things, because we know, again, within, there's a, you know, there's some legislation around confidentiality, FIA and FIPA, and so really ensuring that, you know, we're protecting everything. So that's a process that we do. We get the HERC members to sign a confidentiality. So that's part of the orientation package. And then just again, a brief overview again of the First Nations Health and Social Secretariat of Manitoba, because again, we're within FNHSSM. So that's a part of some of the things that are in the orientation package. So research process and application. So how will this look? So what process will there be internally? How will the application process be identified, whether it's on a website and via paper application? So with HERC right now, we do have, if you look at the FNHSSM website and then you go into the Health Information Research Governance Committee tab, there is basically a resolution, and then as well as our research application process that is there. And also we do have this diagram. So again, application submission or resubmission, there is an internal review. So this is kind of a path of how the research application comes through the research, the HERC committee. Again, and basically looking at a full review, some responses provided, and again, if there's conditional approval, there's some things that the researcher has to do, and then it will come back for a review again, and then whether it be denied or supported. So definitely, this is kind of, you know, again, a walkthrough, an example. Yours is going to definitely be probably different, but this is on the website. So if you want to take a closer look, this is provided there. So also too, this is kind of, you know, this is, I'll show you a few of the slides going forward, is the research application. Again, it is on the website, so you could look at it more closely. So when a researcher applies into HERC, this is the application they will fill out. So basically a summary and abstract of the project. Is it a part of a larger project, or is it a continuation of a previous project? So there's just some, you know, again, questions we do ask. Is this an amendment or a new ethics submission been submitted? So again, they do go through a lot of this application. And with the 4 criteria, we do ask specific questions. So First Nations research ethics protocol, but also ownership, control, access and possession. How is it benefiting First Nations? Again, what is the methodology being used? Are you doing interviews, qualitative or quantitative interviews? Like just different things that you the Health Information Research Governance Committee will look at. And then also within this application, there's a lot and it's really small, but definitely I'm just going to go through it.
I was going to just say quickly that the application is online if you want to take a look. I'll put the link to the application so that you can see and read further, just to kind of see the details that are in there. So once this application is completed by the researcher, it does come in for an internal review, which our research ethics coordinator, who is Sage Broomfield, they will look at it and definitely go through the process. If there's anything that needs to be, we usually give, you know, a time frame of before the, again, for example, HERC will meet on September 18th. August 30th, which is Friday, the deadline is, so that we have time for that internal review in case there might be some things missing before the meeting. And then once that is completed, HERC will review the application and provide, you know, whether it's approval, conditional approval, or deny the project. And so it's just going through that process. They may, you know, send another letter to the researcher and saying, you know, we're just wondering about this. So again,
there is specific questions they may ask each researcher. So we do also have a clinical advisor that comes into HERC that is just provides that advice. So they're a non-voting member, but we like within any clinical trials with First Nations in Manitoba. So there is insight into that as well too. So really just going through, and they do a thorough job. A lot of times, like, looking through the application and just asking questions back and forth. So that's the process that goes through. And then once that's complete, once the meeting's complete, the researcher will get a letter again stating whether they're approved, conditional approved, and there might be some questions. And the researcher does have an opportunity to, if it's a conditional approval, provide answers to those questions. Again, they will work with the research ethics coordinator to ensure that they're getting those questions completed, and then for the next review as well too, and then provide either that approval or conditional approval again. So that there's definitely that relationship that happens throughout. So just going to look at ethics and OCAP. So ownership, control, access, and possession. So how do you plan to implement First Nations ethics and ownership, control, access, and possession? So ownership, control, access, and possession actually will look may look different for each research governance committee. You would define what ownership means when it comes to data information. A First Nation community will definitely provide those guidelines within that. What's control? Like, do you want your data to be stored somewhere else, for instance, or do you want to have full, which is possession, or is there a stewardship, and what is that process in place? So it will look different for each First Nation community. It will look different for each organization, but really establishing that within your research governance committee, within again that criteria that you put in place in regards to researchers, and looking at that, and researchers coming to respect what you've put in place. So again, ethics, these are just examples of different things that you can put in place with different criteria. HERC does have the 4 criteria. You don't necessarily have to, include those specific, but that's an example. Again, First Nations benefit. Any First Nations research that's done in Manitoba should benefit First Nations. There should be, again, the research should really also too, within that First Nations benefit criteria, you could have that, that the researcher hire research assistants in your community. So there's just different areas that you could put in place within your research and your research application. For me, again, this is self-determination, and this is a sovereignty for each community, but also each organization to really implement if you're going to be having those data research relationships with researchers, that there's a protocol in place. So First Nations ethics. So each First Nation is distinct and has their own histories, identities, realities, languages, political interests, and jurisdiction that need to be taken into consideration. So this means in addition to or in replace of institutional and governmental ethics standards, we must engage in the ethical standards put forth by each First Nation or First Nation group you are working with. So this also means that we need to be mindful of and refrain from using pan-Indigenous approaches. So I'll just kind of give a brief, with the Indigenous group, again, with First Nations, with HERC, or when a pan-Indigenous, when the researcher uses the word Indigenous, we always say, well, that includes First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. HERC will say that, again, we don't speak on behalf of Métis or Inuit people. We recommend that, you ensure you're engaging with those groups. We won't provide, an umbrella approval if it is utilizes the word Indigenous. If it's First Nation, then we've been mandated as HERC with the Chiefs in Assembly in regards to First Nations in Manitoba. So just really looking at that, and again, as well, within whether it be your organization or your community, First Nation community. I guess an example I can give is with tribal councils as well. They work with a number of communities. So again, really ensuring that how that mandate is put into place. And really your resolution, or however, again, a motion, or however you go about mandating something within your organization or within your community, it would really defining what that is really important. So other items need to be taken into consideration. And so basically, again, this is where I guess I can kind of have a little bit of insight into it from what the journey I've had. So basically within research governance committees, again, I always say, I would love to see a research governance committee in every First Nation community, because unfortunately our communities, sometimes have to do some of this on the side of their desk. So again, ensuring that, that research that community is respected when it comes to research. When a researcher goes into community, they're not just showing up and saying, you know what, I have this research and I'm going to do it. That research, like I always say, First Nations rights are more important than researchers' rights, not the opposite. So really respecting our communities and really respecting our organizations and how to engage in that research relationship is important. And that's why, again, for me, I think that research governance committees are really important to put in place. Again, we're definitely within HERC, that is, again, a regional body. It has assisted in that process when it comes to research in Manitoba, and advocating for different programs for First Nations, and ensuring that, that research is going to benefit, that advocacy and that support in regards to health related research, but we're looking also social determinants of health as well too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for all your knowledge. Are there any questions before we end the live? We do have our information here. So as mentioned before, if you want a copy of the recording and as well as the PowerPoint, to send us an email at fnhssmdatasovereignty@fnism.com. It is in the chat box, but also in the chat box, we've included the link to the application for researchers for HERC, so that you can see and you could use as a template, perhaps our guidance, but there's also the pathways that it is there. The save the date poster has been shared. The conference is January 21st to 23rd, 2025 in Winnipeg, and it is open. We are opening it up to anybody across Canada to join us. And our upcoming session, September session, Telling Your Story Through Data, it is on the last Thursday at 12 o'clock. October, I did not do the last Thursday because it is Halloween, and I'm a big fan of Halloween. And I think we have celebrations at the office, so it will be on that Wednesday at the end of October, and that one is on proposal writing 101. So it'll be the basics of proposal writing, and then the November session will be on archives 101. So the links are in the chat box if you want to click on and sign up for upcoming sessions. But once again, thank you so much, Vanessa. Really appreciate all the knowledge that you've shared with us today. And when you sign off, you'll notice a pop-up box, and that's just a feedback box. There's only 2 questions, very short. And if you have any further questions that might come into it and you think, oh, I forgot to ask, please include your email so that we can respond back. But once again, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate everyone coming out, taking part, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Have a great day.
Oh yeah, and then you have, do you see the slide of your data sovereignty team? Okay, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.